Joe Rogan is the most listened to podcast host in America. To give you a feel for the size of his audience, he gets an average of about 11 million viewers per episode. And his episodes are, by the way, 2 to 3 hours, longer than Larry's sermons. Well, it's amazing the audience this guy has. To put that in context, the most watched news broadcast in America is ABC Evening News. It's got an audience of 9 million people. So this one guy is bringing in more viewers than the biggest network newscast in the nation. He actually, reportedly, his last deal he signed with Spotify was like a 5-year contract for $100 million. Wow. So this guy has incredible influence. Does anyone in here know who Kid Rock is? Yeah. Kid Rock? Okay. Kid Rock is a very successful musician, influencer, businessman. He was recently on Joe Rogan's show. I'm going to show a clip from it in a moment, but I want to give you a little context first. The context is this. Kid Rock got into a spat with the executives of the Bud Light Brewing Company because they hired a transgender influencer named Dylan Mulvaney to market their beer. And Kid Rock did not like that. They ultimately dropped that, and Kid Rock and the Bud Light executives mended their ways, and they're friends now. So it's just a little context for the video. It's not the main point of it, but you're going to see him with a Bud Light talking about forgiveness. You'll understand now what exactly that means. Let it roll.
If you could go to one place, where would you go? If you had one shot, you can go back in time once and survive and come back to the future, where would you go?
Jesus.
Jesus. What if there was nobody there?
Even better. I get them all to myself, just me and Jesus?
No, I mean, what if Jesus wasn't there? What if you go back and you're like, I just want to go see Jesus? And you're like, okay, what time?
He'd be there. He'd probably like a DJ back then. He's there.
You think there's a real Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
What makes you convinced?
My faith.
I mean, that's a good answer. I always wonder when people are telling stories, though. Like, how long did that story take before people wrote it down? How many times did people alter it? Just like they do with everything today. I got to imagine that at a certain point in time in history, they probably didn't tell the truth about a lot of things. And we take those things, tell them through oral traditions, have them written down.
Well, there's a difference between lies and between the truth getting, manipulated and twisted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying usually is still there.
So you think the real truth was that he actually was the Son of God?
Yes.
It'd be amazing if it was true.
It is amazing.
I believe you. I believe that you believe that.
Would you like to be introduced to Jesus?
Listen, I think the concept of Jesus is absolutely amazing. And if Jesus came here and wanted to visit me, I would be psyched.
Would you like to know Jesus?
In what way?
I can put my pastor on your show.
I'm good.
She's great. Pastor Paula White. She's Trump's spiritual advisor, too.
Oh, that's
You should have her on the show. Talk about Jesus.
I'm very interested in the idea of Jesus being a real person. But I look at it the same way I look at everything else. Whereas, like,
so let's circle
what
back.
the words
let's
are...
Let's circle back. You told me that you believed in Bigfoot.
No, I was joking around. I was joking
okay.
around. I was joking around. But I wanted Bigfoot to be real, for sure. Just like I want Jesus to be real.
He is?
Well, the thing, Bigfoot used to be real. The thing that I found out when I really got fascinated by Bigfoot.
You know how you know Jesus is real right in this moment?
How?
Because the forgiveness that I am exercising by drinking this Bud Light right now.
Oh, that's Jesus?
That's Jesus. Jesus is everywhere. He's in this room. He's in the world. He's in the universe. By the aliens that you want so desperately to be real or have the concept of them being real, that's Jesus. That is Jesus. As a Christian, I have to believe in forgiveness.
Beautiful. Cheers. Well said.
Sorry for that. I thought about cutting that out, but it's all good. Yeah. By the way, I did cut other things out. There was some inappropriate language in that segment, and I did shorten it for length, but that was the gist of it. So, first of all, let's talk about what Kid Rock did right, because he did something that far too many Christians don't do, which is he spoke about Jesus boldly and confidently. Here's some verses from the Bible about how we should all be doing that. And immediately, he proclaimed Jesus in the synagogues. By the way, that's enemy territory, right? Yeah. Imagine going into a Jewish synagogue and saying, I'm proclaiming Jesus. These guys did it, saying he is the Son of God. Romans, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Acts 14, so they remained for a long time speaking boldly for the Lord. And Acts 19, again, he entered the synagogue and for 3 months spoke boldly, reasoning and persuading them about the kingdom of God. So now let's talk about where Kid Rock kind of messed up a little bit. See, when Joe Rogan asked him, why do you believe this? He just appealed to blind faith. And Rogan said, after some reflection, that's a good answer. But really, it wasn't enough to convince him, because when he asked him, do you want to know Jesus? He said, ultimately, nah, I'm okay. And there are really good answers to this that we as Christians should be equipped with. Let's put up Rogan's words again. I just want to repeat them just to reinforce them. I always wonder why when people are telling stories, how long did it take before people wrote it down? How many times did people alter it, just like they do with everything today? How true that is, right? I got to imagine that at a certain point in time in history, they probably didn't tell the truth about a lot of things. And you know what? Up until about the age of 25, I felt the same way. I was an atheist, so I know exactly what he's talking about. But the truth of the matter is, after I started digging into it, doing some research, doing some homework, I realized these views are untenable because there are an enormous amount of compelling facts for the accuracy of the Bible, for the existence of Jesus, for the reality of God. Yes, I do. Most of you know I have a book called Rational Conclusions. Some of you are new, you might not, but I have copies in the car. You're welcome to them for free. So I'm just going to review some of that evidence. So first, there was a Roman historian in the first century named Cornelius Tacitus. And he's considered by far to be the greatest historian of the first century Rome and the entire Roman Empire. And this is what he wrote. Nero fastened the guilt. Nero was a Roman emperor. Fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius, another Roman emperor, at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome. This is not a person who likes Christians. He is what's called a hostile witness. Yet he confirms 7 key elements of the Bible and also a prophecy of Jesus. Let's go through it real quick. First of all, Christians. The Bible says that Christians, people called followers of Christ Christians, back in the early days of the Gospels. That's exactly what Tacitus refers to them. Christus, that's Christ, that's Jesus. Tacitus referred to and acknowledged the existence of Jesus. Remember, Kid Rock says, I don't know if he's a real person. What happens if I get there and he's not there? Well, the greatest historian says he was there. I'm not just talking about the Bible here, talking about enemies of the Bible. He also says that, by the way, Christus is Latin for Messiah, right? This is, people called him the Messiah. Also says he suffered the extreme penalty. You know what the extreme penalty was under Roman law, according to another Roman historian? Crucifixion, right? Again, corroborating the Bible. During the reign of Tiberius. Tiberius was the emperor recorded in the Bible at the time of Jesus' ministry and crucifixion. Then he mentions Pontius Pilate, the guy who gave the orders to kill Jesus, right? Then he mentions this occurred in Judea, which is where the Bible sets the crucifixion and the ministry, a lot of the ministry of Jesus. And it also mentions that this belief system found its way to Rome, which is also recorded in the Bible. Tacitus records something else. Then he gets into detail about what happened to Christians, to people who believed this mischievous superstition, he calls it, right? That Christ rose from the dead. Get this. An arrest was first made, and try to put this in our context today, if this is what was going on right now. An arrest was first made of all who pleaded guilty. Imagine the officials coming through the door. Then upon their information, an immense multitude, a lot of people, were convicted. Mockery of every sort was added to their deaths. Covered with the skins of beasts, they were torn by dogs and perished or were nailed to crosses or were doomed to the flames and burnt to serve as a nightly illumination when daylight had expired. Nero reigned from 21 to 35 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. In other words, these people that this was happening to, these were Jesus' contemporaries. Would you be saying that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah, that he rose from the dead, if you knew this was coming for you, unless you were absolutely certain? There's no way. There's no way. So not only is the existence of Jesus corroborated, but also his very rising from the dead through what Tacitus records here. Then there's the greatest Jewish historian of the first century, a guy by the name of Flavius Josephus. This is what he wrote. Annas, he was a Jewish high priest, who, by the way, is recorded in the Bible, more corroboration, assembled the Sanhedrin. What's that? That's the Jewish high court, which is also mentioned in the Bible, of judges, and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, who was called the Messiah, right? That's what Christ means, Messiah, whose name was James. James was Jesus' brother, who is also recorded in the Bible, and some others. And when he informed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them up to be stoned. That's kind of vague, breakers of the law, but I think we can imagine why the brother of Jesus might be stoned. He's the author of the book of James in the Bible. He's a follower of Jesus, a vocal proponent of Jesus. I think he was stoned because he said Jesus, it was the Messiah. Now, I have two brothers who I love. And if somebody told me they're going to kill me and stone me to death if I called them the Messiah, you better believe I would not. Plus, anyone who knows them would never believe me anyway. There's also archaeological evidence. A lot of the rulers in the Bible, there is plaques and archaeological testaments to them, coins minted by them. These were real people, real events that happened. Let's look at this first coin. Luke 21:2-1. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. He was the emperor of the Roman Empire when Jesus was born. I actually have one of those coins. They're not as rare as you might think because they minted them by the millions. I'm going to just pass them around, let everybody take a look. This is a coin minted by Caesar Augustus. It was the real deal. Here's another coin. But when Joseph, Jesus' father, heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. So Archelaus was the king of Judea during the birth of Jesus. Here's his coin. Well, it'll get to you. You'll all get a chance. Send it around, everybody. You pushing? Is this making its way? Yes. Okay. And finally, and by the way, I've got many coins like this. This isn't the extent of my collection, or not even close to how many people are mentioned in the Bible. But Luke 3, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius, the word of God came to John, son of Zechariah, in the wilderness. That's John the Baptist. This is the outset of Jesus' ministry. This is a coin minted by Tiberius Caesar. He is. Probably one of my ancestors, too. So actually, Tacitus, little brief aside, Tacitus, the historian, actually mentioned a guy in the army named Julius Agrestis. So that has to be one of my ancestors. And when he describes how crazy the guy was, I'm like, yeah, I got to come from this guy. No question. Then there's the Pool of Siloam. This is an archaeological find discovered in 2005. Just like Devin's the son of Larry, right? Discovered in 2005. This is the pool mentioned in the Bible where Jesus healed a blind man. Real places, real people, real events. So when Rogan asked Rock, why do you believe? It's okay to say because of my faith, but I think it would have been a little more compelling to say, by the way, there is an enormous amount of evidence that the Bible is true. In my book, I document more than 100 people, places, and events in the Bible corroborated by history and archaeology. And that's what separates Christianity and Judaism from all other faiths. All other faiths are based on somebody's spiritual visions, whether it's Muhammad or Buddha or a moral system. The events in the Bible about events that were really happened, that people could go check, corroborate with other sources, it's real. Joe Rogan is excited by the idea of Jesus being real? Absolutely, he's real. No question. So, there's another thing that's important here. I'm talking about external big biblical evidence, but within the Bible, without any measure of faith, there is a lot of proof that the book is accurate. Or should I say, the books. Because we look at the Bible, we hold it as a single book, right? But what is it? 66 books written by dozens of authors over more than 1,000 years. Do you know what would happen if these people were not telling the truth? You would find an enormous amount of conflicts between them. Yet what you find is an incredible continuity. There are some superficial discrepancies, but they disappear when you gather a little more information. And by the way, that is the hallmark of an accurate account. One of the greatest legal scholars of all time is a fellow by the name of Simon Greenleaf. He was a professor of law at Harvard. He and another guy named Joseph Story are the two guys that put Harvard Law School on the map. These are the guys that established the reputation for it because they were incredible attorneys, incredibly acute thinkers, incredibly logical, and they were experts at differentiating fact from fiction. And this is what Greenleaf wrote. It is not possible for the wit of man to invent a story which, if closely compared with the actual occurrences of the same time and place, may not be shown to be false. What he was saying is, you can't concoct a story that's false that I can't figure out is false. Now, this guy did an examination of the 4 Gospels using that methodology. It's a 400-page book where he gets into every little detail of the Bible. And there's a lot of them in the Gospels, by the way. A lot of detail. And he tore it apart, he shredded it, and this was his conclusion. The Gospels show no signs of being creation of fiction and every indication of being true narratives of facts. I'll tell you a little story. Back in my pre-Christian days, I was the president of a fraternity that was the campus animal house. And we were associated with a national fraternity only for the reason so we didn't get kicked off. They had weight, they had money, they had influence. So we paid our dues, but we had really nothing to do with it. We didn't observe the fraternity traditions. We didn't keep the books. We didn't do anything like that. And then one day, someone from the national fraternity called and said, we're coming to do an audit to see if you guys are in keeping with the rules of the fraternity. Well, luckily, we had had a massive fire not long before. So when they came, our story was, and we all said it, where's your founding documents? Where's this? It burned in the fire. Burned in the fire. Burned in the fire. Now, I'm not condoning lying. This was wrong. But I'm just telling you, when people have hiding a lie, they don't share details. And if they do share details, they can normally be found out. That's why I instructed everybody, don't give them any details. Whatever they ask, you tell them it burned in the fire. Where's your big brother? He burned in the fire. I don't know.
The mastermind.
Yeah. So here's what I'm driving at here for the real events of Christmas. The real events of Christmas are in the Bible.
Yes.
They're in the Bible. And by the way, they're in 4 chapters of the Bible in total. Luke 1-2 and Matthew 1-2. It takes all of about 20 minutes max to read them. So I ask you this, during this Christmas season where we spend a ton of time shopping, buying gifts, socializing, cooking, decorating, I'm going to challenge everyone in this room to spend 20 minutes, a tiny fraction of that time, to actually read the real events of Christmas in the Bible. Now you may say, well, there's other stories about Jesus. There's other people who have written stuff about Jesus that's not in the Bible. What about that? That view was popularized in a book and a movie called The Da Vinci Code. Movie was starred Tom Hanks, one of the most famous actors of all time. The author is Dan Brown, one of the most famous authors of all time. I get into this in my book in chapter 5 of Rational Conclusions, but I'm going to summarize what those other books say about Jesus using the words of another great legal scholar in American history, my cousin Vinny. And I'm going to paraphrase him by saying that everything that guy said is garbage. It just doesn't measure up. It is the antithesis of the kind of accuracy and corroboration you find for the Bible. In fact, when I look at today's society and I look at how we celebrate Christmas and how much emphasis we put on it and all the traditions and all the things we do, that's all wonderful. But it seems like we're missing Jesus, the whole point of it oftentimes. It reminds me of what Jesus said to the Samaritan woman at the well. You worship what you do not know. Now let me bring this back full circle to Rock and Rogan. One of the other things Kid Rock did properly is he said Jesus is in everything. He is in everything. Everything you think you want, everything you're looking for, that's him. The Dukas sing about that all the time. The words pierce their lyrics. You heard them today. You hear them every Sunday here. And that's from the book of John. And I'm just going to give you the spiritual context here because it is deep and important. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Let's take this opportunity at Christmas time with all these traditions to shine that light, to share it with people, to tell people about the living word, to tell people about forgiveness of sins, to tell people about all the benefits that Jesus offers us. Like Larry was saying, healing of body, mind, spirit, soul. He gives it all. He is it all. He is the ultimate Christmas gift. Amen. We don't want to lose that. So I asked the Dukas to sing a song for this service, but they couldn't pull it off because they're just too white. And here's a dirty little secret about me. I like black gospel music. I really, really do. You like it too, yeah. In fact, does anyone know there's a pro football player by the name of, let me mix up the names. His name's Warren Sapp. Anyone ever hear of him? Yeah, he's a Pro Bowler. He's one of the greatest football players of all times. I actually met him once. I didn't even know who he was. I'm talking to him, and, hey, I'm Jim Agresti, and he gives me his name. And he goes, hi, I'm Warren Sapp. And I said, any relation to Marvin Sapp? Now, Marvin Sapp is a black gospel singer. So he goes, yeah, actually, he's my cousin. He goes, it's funny you say that. And I said, why? He goes, well, I'm a pro football player, and he's always telling me that every time he mentions his name, people ask if they know me. He goes, this is the first time anyone's ever asked if I know him. So I'm going to tell him. So anyway, there's a beautiful song he did. Can you let that roll? Listen to the words. They're deep. They're all about the living word. So there are people out there like Joe Rogan. They're hungry for Jesus. Listen to what he said. I'm very interested in the idea of Jesus being a real person. It would be amazing if it was true. I think the concept of Jesus is absolutely amazing. If Jesus came here, wanted to visit me, I'd be psyched. Jesus asked us to be his hands and feet on earth. So let's go visit people and bring them the light. Merry Christmas, everybody.